breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Vikings season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. Our producer is Robbie Rosenhaus, does a great job getting us on the air, even in a week where this game we have coming up, Robbie, doesn't have quite the luster that it may have had when the schedule makers had the Washington Commanders coming to US Bank Stadium to play the Vikings in week 14 after both teams were playoff teams last year, and the Commanders made it to the NFC title game in Philly after they knocked off Tampa Bay and then thrashed the Lions in Detroit in the divisional round and then got hammered by the Eagles in the NFC title game. Jaden Daniels, Rookie of the Year, Pro Bowl quarterback, led the way, good solid defense, and it's all kind of come apart for the Commanders in 2026, similarly to a certain extent, but even worse than it's been for the Vikings. The Commanders 3-9 coming in, Vikings 4-8 off 4 straight losses. The Commanders have lost 7 straight, but the last 2 were in overtime. They lost in Madrid to the Dolphins 16-13, and then last week 27-26 in overtime against the 10-2 Broncos. And in that game, the Commanders were going for the win at the end. And Marcus Mariota, who had replaced Jaden Daniels, been out the last 3 games with a dislocated elbow. Mariota's pass was knocked down, and Denver emerged with the win. But the Commanders feeling a little bit better about themselves coming here. And we're going to hear from their coach, Dan Quinn, talking about how their team is showing a little bit of signs of life. And we'll hear from Kevin O'Connell talking about the Vikings and JJ McCarthy, who's returning to the lineup. And it is possible that Jaden Daniels could be back this week too. He was a full participant in practice today for the first time in several weeks. Now, the question is, has he indeed been cleared for full contact? Will he play in the game? We'll know when the final injury report is released on Friday, perhaps if he's even listed as questionable at that point, or a full go. But the Vikings have to prepare for both Marcus Mariota and Jaden Daniels, and a running game that ranks 3rd in the league, a team that really is a lot better when they have all their pieces than a 3-9 team, because they, like the Vikings, have been hit hard by injuries this year.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And you look at the wide receiver core with Terry McLaurin basically only playing a couple of games this year. They've been hit on defense by a rash of injuries. And obviously at the quarterback position with Jaden Daniels. And just looking at these two teams, Jeff, just to kind of switch the conversation to next year, because this game in the grand scheme of things is not going to mean a whole lot in the record books. But looking ahead to 2026, perhaps, are these two teams that you are going to look at as bounce back candidates going into next year with all the things that we've just talked about? Jaden Daniels being hurt, potentially a better solution or a better performance at quarterback for the Vikings with the same kind of defense. So I'm looking at these two teams next year, especially with 3rd or 4th place schedules to play, as bounce back candidates. Your thoughts on that as we move forward?
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be the case. You're talking about teams that the Vikings won 14 games last year. The Commanders won also 14 games, including their 2 playoff wins. Both teams hit hard by injuries this year. We know that for a fact. And the big question, of course, for the Vikings is going to be what's going to happen at quarterback. What kind of improvement will McCarthy show in these last 5 games? If indeed he can stay healthy for a stretch and play all 5 games, then it's really on him on what kind of improvement he shows. Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator, say that the offense has been a little bit simplified, perhaps, for these last several games, trying to help JJ. The Vikings need to run the ball better. They need health on the offensive line. These have all been factors. But ultimately, it's McCarthy who's got to prove that he can be more accurate. His 54% passer rate or completion percentage, worst in the league. His 57 something passer rating is worst among all starters. Those numbers have got to get better over these last 5 games. That to me is the big measuring block and the big focus for these last 5 games, starting with this Washington game. McCarthy's improvement and turning around that turnover ratio that's dreadful this year, -15, worse than the NFL after they were +12, third best last year. They need more takeaways from the defense. We'll hear from Andrew Van Ginkel talking about that. They need fewer giveaways. There are 26 giveaways, most in the league, and a bunch of those are on McCarthy. He's got 10 interceptions and 1 lost fumble in only 6 games played. He has yet to play a game without throwing a pick, and we know he's got to get Justin Jefferson more involved. 2 catches for 4 yards last week. That is just ridiculous. Addison's got to catch the ball. A lot of things have to happen for this Viking team to turn a corner, more or less. It may not obviously lead to a playoff spot this year, but as you said, it could set the table for massive improvement next year. Let's go to a couple of audio highlights and then hear from some of the particulars in our interview segment. And first, let's go back to last week in Washington, the Sunday night game, and the Broncos won that game 27-26 in overtime over the Commanders. Marcus Mariota had a pretty good day overall. He threw for 294 and a touchdown and ran for 55 yards. And you're talking about against the number 5 ranked defense. So if it's Mariota playing, he's coming off a good game. And or if it's Jaden Daniels coming back, what kind of rust will he have after missing the last 3 games? But we know what kind of talent he is. And so here was the 4th down touchdown pass that Mariota threw to Terry McLaurin. You mentioned McLaurin missing several games this year, and this was his first game back after missing the last 4 with a quad injury, but he caught what almost proved to be the winning score.
Game decider, Mariota inside McCarthy, touchdown!
So that made it 27-26, and that led to this play, which was the game-winning pass breakup by Nick Bonito of Marcus Mariota's potential 2-point conversion, and he had a guy wide open, but just couldn't get it past Bonito.
Washington for the win. Mariota has it rejected by Bonito, and Denver has won 9 in a row.
So yeah, that was quite the finish, and a more exciting game perhaps than some people expected with the Commanders' record. But as I said, this is a team that's got a lot of talent, just like the Vikings have a lot of talent, and that's the fine line that exists in the NFL. Let's go back to the divisional playoff game last year in Detroit, which was really somewhat of a shocker. The Lions, number 1 seed after beating the Vikings in the season finale. The Commanders came in after beating Tampa Bay in the wild card round. Detroit, home field advantage, and Washington and Jaden Daniels just dominated this game. Here was a touchdown pass from Daniels to Zach Ertz. Seems like he never ages. he had 10 catches last week, by the way. A guy the Vikings would have to keep an eye on Sunday. But this was a touchdown pass at the end of the first half.
4-man rush this time, zips it in, caught by your guy, Zach Ertz, touchdown.
Yeah, that was 30 points, 31 points in the first half by Washington last January in that playoff game in Detroit. And the Commanders went on to the NFC title game, got thrashed 55-23 by the Eagles, an Eagle team that's a lot different than the Eagle team we saw lose to the Bears on Black Friday. They're having their issues this year. We'll talk about that later in the show too. For the Vikings, they need more plays such as what happened on their first takeaway in 4 games last week in Seattle. And one of the guys we talked about earlier in the week, Dallas Turner, had a big game against the Seahawks. He's really been coming on, one of the bright spots for this team. And it's one of the things that has to happen over these last several games, the development of Turner, McCarthy, some of the other young players that really need to continue to step up their game. Turner last week, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits. He's got 4 sacks in the last 3 games. That's a great sign for a guy the Vikings traded up to get in the first round last year. And here was the big forced fumble he made in that game, which set up the Vikings for what looked like an opportunity to go ahead until Max Brosmer threw the most dreadful interception in maybe Vikings history.
Packers under 300 yards, did not give up a single explosive play. And here's another sack. The ball is out, and this time Minnesota's got it. Sack from Turner, recovery from Redmond.
So the Vikings and the Commanders put their losing streaks on the line. Someone's got to emerge this week unless they tie. And as I mentioned, turnovers are going to be a key. That was one we just heard. But both of these teams come in with really bad turnover ratios. The Vikings, as I said, minus 15, worst in the league. The Commanders, minus 8, third worst in the league. Vikings, 11 takeaways, 8th fewest. The Commanders only have 7 takeaways this year, which is the second worst. And the Vikings lead the league, as I said, with those 26 giveaways. That has got to change over the remaining games of the season. And we will see how it plays out beginning this week. I think, Robbie, I know you're taking your family to this game. I think it's going to be a better game than a lot of people expect. I think it'll be an exciting football game, and we'll make our picks in a little bit. But I think you're still talking about 2 teams with a lot of talent.
No, without a doubt. And it's indoors, so you don't have to worry about the elements. And as we know, up here in Minnesota, it was negative temperatures overnight. So we're not going to see freezing here for a while. But luckily, we have this beautiful Purple Palace downtown that we welcome teams here in. And in comes Washington this week. And it just seems like, as we've just talked about for the last couple of minutes, they seem to play exciting games. Look at the game against the Broncos that they just played, which came down to the wire. So they're a high wire act. Their defense isn't great. Their quarterback is, if he plays, and this Viking defense is volatile, especially at home. We saw what happened against the Eagles, but then we saw what happened against quarterbacks that aren't as good, like Jake Browning. So we'll see what happens with Daniels. We'll see what happens with Washington. I'm very much looking forward to the game this week because, like you said, I think it's going to be highly entertaining.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, it's indoors compared to the Bears headed to Green Bay, projected high 18 degrees, wind chills and all that at Lambeau Field for that big matchup for first place. We'll talk about that game a little bit later and hear from some of the coaches involved and the players. But first, let's talk about our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. GMC trucks weren't built overnight. Like every American achievement, they are a result of dedication, a dedication to mastering the art of design and the science of engineering, to building upon prior knowledge year after year, decade after decade. GMC, over 100 years, dedicated to the art of engineering and the ambition to always move this country forward. We are professional grade, well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2026 GMC Sierra 1500 crew cab models with a 5.3-liter engine with an average finance savings of $4,692. See your Select Minnesota GMC dealers. Only on 5.3-liter V8 engine for purchase allowance, length of contract limited, must finance with GM Financial. Some customers will not qualify. Savings based on bank rate of 5.64%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivered by 1/2/26. Kevin O'Connell talking this week about what he's looking for from JJ McCarthy for the rest of the season.
Development process, but as I talked to him this week, it's purely about decision making at this point. And there'll be time to ultimately fundamentally focus on things and build, continue building kind of this layer of, a foundation that will be important for him into the future. But now it feels like he's got enough experience, he kind of knows a lot of these principles that we've talked about. I want him to have a clear head and a clear mind to just go play, but play with an understanding of the decisions that I make with the ball in my hand, the decisions that I make as a passer, and as we've learned, very important as a runner, to protect himself and make sure that we can keep him in there. All of those things have to be of the utmost importance, because we've learned, our turnover number is where it is, and it's not a winning formula. And we've shown over the 4 years, to Mark's point, even when maybe other players had to step in, if we didn't turn the football over, we've had a chance to win a lot of those football games, and we have in the break-even or better mark. And that kind of speaks to part of both questions in a lot of ways. But that would be it, is I don't want him over thinking or worrying about, like, if the fundamentals need to be changed, if they need to be adjusted, we need more time on task on that. That's one thing. But let's just make the throws. Let's just throw and catch. Let's just play with great rhythm and understanding of the plan. And then the ultimate plan of our team on what it's going to take to win a game involves not giving the ball away to the other team.
That's for sure, KOC. Don't give the ball away to the other team, as they've done 26 times this season. So you talk about keys to this game. Obviously, number one, McCarthy has to play well. And perhaps with that little bit simplified game plan, what does that mean? Maybe it means more quick passes, more screens, more slants to Jefferson, to Addison, get them involved early and often. Throwing to the backs, it looks like Aaron Jones will be healthy enough to play in this game with that shoulder that knocked him out in Seattle. A couple other keys. We know win the turnover battle. That's obvious when you have two teams that are two of the worst in the ratio. Certainly getting Jefferson and Addison going early and often, as I said. On defense, stopping the run. Washington ranks third rushing, and a lot of that running comes from their quarterbacks, from either Mariota or Daniels. So perhaps if it's Daniels returning, maybe he won't run as much. But the Vikings defense has to be able to stop the run. They gave up some run yardage in the second half last week at Seattle, when the Seahawks had that comfortable lead and they were just content to grind it out. So we'll see how that works. And the Vikings' last win in Detroit, they stopped the run and they got pressure on Jared Goff, and that was the formula to have success. And McCarthy played decent in that game. They ran the ball well. Go to Detroit and get a win. Since then, hard to understand how things have gone so haywire, but it obviously has started with the quarterback play with McCarthy for the next 3 games, and then Max Brosmer with an awful performance last week. Certainly pressuring Mariota or Daniels is going to be key, and covering a couple really dynamic receivers in McLaurin and Deebo Samuel there. And they might get Noah Brown back this week, who has been injured. And he's a quality player. So a lot of factors going into this game. And as I said, I think it's going to be an entertaining game. Aaron Jones talked this week about getting the running game going and hopefully keep pushing on as a team despite the adversity.
We have gotten the run game established, but we feel like we haven't, like you said, hasn't popped just the way we wanted to, and we feel like we're very close. Maybe one thing here, maybe one thing there, and once I feel like this is the week we'll get it going. And like I said, all it takes is kind of one to get things rolling. Momentum's a crazy thing in this sport, and it's one thing that analytics can't measure.
How tough has this been on for a lot of the guys here that won last year and have done a lot of winning in their career to be in a situation like this where you haven't found yourself too many times in your career?
I wouldn't necessarily say tough, but in a sense, every year is a new year. You can't go in thinking, oh, we won 14 games last year, we're going to win 14 games this year. No, you got to go out there and earn those 14 wins. But in the process, you have to learn how to win as well. And that's what we're doing. We're learning how to win as a team, and I think we're we've taken enough lumps now, and we're gonna get over that hump.
So Aaron Jones and the running game, Jordan Mason, get that going. That will certainly help a young quarterback in JJ McCarthy if the offense is balanced this week. That's going to be keys. We know that defensively for the Vikings, as we've said, they played well enough really to win the last 4 games that they lost. And it's just been a situation where the offense has been bad, the quarterback play has been bad, turnovers, and not forcing enough takeaways to offset that. Prime example last week in Seattle, 5 giveaways, and the defense did have 1 takeaway, and then there was a second takeaway when Jalen Naylor stripped the guy who made the interception. But Andrew Van Ginkel had a good game in Seattle, 5 tackles, 1 sack, and he's been playing well since he returned from his injury. He talked about the defense needing to force more turnovers, and he talked about the young guys like Dallas Turner contributing.
What we do, we haven't lived up to our standards by taking the ball away, putting ourselves in positions to get after the passer and really cause havoc. And, that starts with stopping the run, and it's something that we struggled with at times this year. And, so we had to get back to our identity, and, it takes a lot of hard work, and it's something that we've been working at.
How much does it help when you're going through a season like this that you know that there are guys like LD Rodriguez, like Dallas Turner, that are finding ways to contribute and incrementally do things to kind of take things off everybody else's plate and really do well in the roles they're being asked to fill?
Yeah, it's huge. It just speaks of the vets in the rooms that are helping develop these guys, and guys that are young, inexperienced, that are coming in and getting opportunities to play, and they're really taking advantage of it. They're playing fast. They're starting to get a feel for the game, feel for this scheme and defense, and you're starting to see that on Sunday.
So we're going to come back in a minute and hear from Dan Quinn, the Commanders head coach, and also Robbie and I are going to make our pick for the Viking game and go around the NFL a little bit. But here's a word from our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
GMC trucks weren't built overnight. Like every American achievement, they are a result of dedication and the ambition to always move this country forward. We are professional grade. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2026 GMC Sierra 1500 Elevation Crew Cab models with a Turbo Max engine. That's an average finance savings of $49.49. Current eligible GMC owners combine it with $1,350 engine credit plus $1,750 bonus cash and $3,500 GMC loyalty cash to get over $11,500 in total value. That's 20% below MSRP. See your local GMC dealer today. Based on MSRP at $55,370. Must be a current owner of a 2011 model year or newer Buick or GMC vehicle, or a current lessee of a 2020 model year or newer Buick or GMC vehicle through GM Financial for at least 30 days prior to new vehicle sale. Length of contract limited. Some customers will not qualify. Savings based on a bank rate of 5.22%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 12/1/25.
Big game with the Commanders this week, even if it's not necessarily having the playoff ramifications that we thought, and a huge game for JJ McCarthy. These last 5 games, as we've talked about, critical for him. He's got to make a move now, show improvement, or the Vikings are going to be in a scenario where they're going to have to bring in a quality veteran quarterback to compete with JJ next year. Thinking about it, you'd have to trade for a guy like Mac Jones in San Francisco. He's got a 5-3 record, 97 passer rating with the 49ers, comes from a similar system, kind of when Darnold was signed here from San Francisco. He's a guy that could be a target, but the 49ers may think we got to keep him because Brock Purdy gets hurt too much. Could it be Kirk Cousins coming back? Who knows? Maybe Ryan Tannehill comes out of retirement, but McCarthy's got to make some strides. And even if he does show big improvement, they still probably have to bring in a good veteran backup, better than Carson Wentz. And we know Max Brosmer is probably not the answer because McCarthy gets hurt. And until he can show that he's more durable, they're going to need to bring in another quality veteran quarterback. I think what's interesting this week, Robbie, you've got the coach of the year from last year, Kevin O'Connell, based largely on the great work he did with Sam Darnold. And you got the guy who probably finished second in the Coach of the Year race was Dan Quinn in Washington with the great turnaround season that they had with Jaden Daniels and that defense playing much better, which they've taken a backward turn this year too. The Washington defense ranking 31st, but Dan Quinn is feeling better about his team after the showing they had against the Broncos. And he talked this week about his team and their resilience.
I think I'm going to keep coming back to resilience, but I was pleased on this game. There was a next play mindset. And as disappointing as it was, like the example I use, they scored on the very first drive, went right down the field and scored, and there was like zero flinch on the offense. And it wasn't like, oh, here we go. None of that. And so the same, we got stopped in the fourth quarter offensively, the defense was ready to go get a stop. And so I thought there was this resilience for the next play. Like if that one went to 6 quarters, we were going to be down to fight. Like whatever, like they just had that. And so I think when you see a team have resilience, that's a big deal. What I saw in Spain, I loved energy and toughness and doing things together. Neither of these games worked out for us and stung a lot, but there are things that I liked about their competitive nature, their toughness, and like those things matter in our game. They matter for the standard here. And when you get to demonstrate it and express it, man, like it may not be seen on the outside, the walls, but for damn sure it is on the inside.
So a couple other keys, and maybe this could be a hidden factor, the kicking game. It's always a big factor. We know it killed the Vikings 3 straight weeks, basically the special teams errors during the current losing skid. And Will Reichard, one of the top kickers in the league this year, only 2 missed kicks. The Washington kicker now is Jake Moody on his 3rd team this year. And here's a guy who missed 11 kicks last year. He's been okay in his limited time in Washington, but he's a guy that can always go bad on the Commanders. We'll see how that plays out. The Washington has one of the top kickoff return units in the league. They rank 2nd. That could be a problem for the Vikings, who gave up that huge return that killed them in the Baltimore game, we know. And so maybe Miles Price can bust a big return and not fumble the ball. Those are all factors that are part of the equation. Limiting the penalties, they had been a little better recently until last week. 10 more penalties in that game. So that's going to be a factor. And the home crowd. The Vikings are 1-4 at home this year. That can't happen to this team and this organization that has a great history of winning at home and having that intimidating crowd. So I think it's really important to get off to a good start in this game, get the crowd in the game, feeling positive, not having the boo birds come out. And JJ McCarthy has yet to win at home. His 2 wins in the NFL, he's 2-4. His 2 wins were both on the road at Chicago and at Detroit. So JJ looking for his first win. Okay, Robbie, let's pick this game. And I went first last week. I'm going to let you go first this week.
Okay, so written in the stars, my dad and brothers will be in town. My dad has never been in the stadium. The only time my brother's been in the stadium was actually for the Super Bowl, which they had gotten tickets for before the Vikings even had a chance to be in the game. They were traveling here for the game regardless. Nevertheless, enough personal stories, just personal pain, as the Vikings have provided a lot of that this year for you, myself, and the fan base. But not Sunday, Jeff, because Sunday the Vikings are coming out of there with a 24-17 victory. I think JJ is going to throw for 2 touchdowns, and I think he's going to come out with a nice passer rating and his first home victory. 24-17 home team. Your thoughts, Jeff?
Okay, I hope you're right. I just have a kind of a hard time seeing it come to fruition. And I do see a close game. I think McCarthy will play decent. I think the Vikings will have some success running the ball. The Commanders, as we said, their defense has been dreadful this year, 31st overall. So there are opportunities, but until JJ shows me that he's more accurate and can hit the passes he needs to hit, and that he doesn't throw the picks, I just have a hard time picking them to win a game against a team with quarterbacks who are playing better than him. And Mariota coming off a good game against Denver, and Jaden Daniels, we know what kind of confident player he is. So I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm picking Washington 24-23, and I hope I'm wrong. So we will see how it turns out. And looking around the NFL, of course, the big game in the NFC North and in the NFC, the Bears, the surprising 9-3 Bears off their Black Friday upset in Philly with 281 rushing yards. They head to Lambeau Field. It's going to be cold. Take on the 8-3-1 Packers. Packers, I think, are about a 6.5-point favorite, which is a little surprising in a cold weather game where you figure the scoring may be a little bit down, but we'll see. Packers, of course, playing with confidence, just won in Detroit with Jordan Love and Micah Parsons having big games. I see the Packers winning this game. I think that they're going to go move into first place and kind of vault them towards the NFC North title. They play the Bears in Chicago in 2 more weeks. We're recording
I would agree with you, though. I would take the points there. That's too many points for a division game, 2 teams that have at least 8 wins. I think you take the points there, Jeff.
Yeah, I think so too. And Detroit is hosting Dallas. We're recording on Thursday afternoon, and that'll be a game on Thursday night. We'll see how that turns out. Other big games around the league: Pittsburgh at Baltimore, Indianapolis at Jacksonville, both with first place on the line in those AFC divisions. Houston at Kansas City, a huge game. Philly at the Chargers, a big game. And so there's going to be a lot of excitement this weekend. And I think it'll be an exciting game at US Bank Stadium on Sunday. We will be back to break it down come Monday and talk about the Vikings and the Commanders game and start to look ahead to the Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys Sunday Night TV in Week 15. This has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. This is Jeff Diamond with Robbie Rosenhaus. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on Monday.